A bloody strike against civilians. Russians shelled a passenger train in the Sumy region. Children are among the wounded. The Ukrainian armed forces are tearing the occupiers apart near Pokrovsk. The Russians are trying to encircle the city. Munich Airport has been paralyzed for 2 days due to Russian drones. Ukrainian special forces destroyed enemy air defenses in the Voronezh region. Drones are smashing the largest oil refinery in the Leningrad region and striking Sochi right while Putin is there. Hello, my name is Karina Klishun, and right now the main news. But first, please like this video and subscribe to our channel so we don't lose touch with you on YouTube. Russian forces cynically struck a passenger train from Shostka to Kiev in the Sumy region with a drone, right at the train station. There are children among the wounded. While rescuers were working, the Russians carried out a second strike. This is yet another egregious crime by Russia against humanity. Also in Kherson, a car carrying a mother and her 2 sons came under Russian artillery fire. One is 8 years old, the other is 17. All 3 were wounded. They are now fighting for their lives in the hospital. The Kherson prosecutor's office has already launched a criminal investigation into the war crime. And in the occupied part of Kharkiv region, it is simply horrific. Our intelligence officers intercepted a conversation that chills the blood. A Russian soldier opened fire right in the entrance of a residential building. 3 civilians were killed. By the way, the shooter himself didn't survive either. He caught bullets from his own side.
What happened? Why are you here then?
He just started shooting all over the entrance. All over the entrance. The guy opened fire all over the entrance.
So someone started shooting. Was it the redhead who started shooting?
Yeah, all over the entrance, all over the entrance, all over the entrance. He's here.
So the redhead is 200, it turns out. He started shooting. What, was it his own bullets that got him?
Looks like it, looks like it, looks like it.
What, did his steel start leaking or something?
Looks like it started leaking, looks like it started leaking. One of mine got away and took 3 more with him. 3 civilians, 3 civilians.
So you'll also tell me about the 3 innocent civilians too, right?
The main intelligence directorate of Ukraine reminds the occupiers, every such act of treachery will be answered. And the response will be harsh. Meanwhile, on the front, the Russians are pushing toward Pokrovsk, trying to encircle the city. These are the words of the 7th Air Assault Corps. Our fighters are putting up a strong resistance against the occupiers. Right now, all the details about what's happening on the front lines are in our report.
The Ukrainian armed forces are radically changing their tactics. This will help avoid encirclement in the future. The notorious Russian pincer movements will no longer work. Russia is trying to open a new front. Escalation in the Zaporizhzhia region. Analysts have explained whether there is a threat to the city itself. And yet another fake Kremlin victory. In the supposedly occupied settlement, the Ukrainian flag is still flying. What is life like on the front today? We'll tell you right now. Russians have fewer and fewer chances to hide from Ukrainian drones. For example, the 7th Air Assault Corps of the Ukrainian Armed Forces reported that in the Pokrovsk direction, Russian army losses in September increased by 1/3 compared to the previous month, totaling over 1,850 personnel. All this is thanks to the fact that the kill zone boundaries have been expanded by improving the capabilities of Ukrainian drones.
After all, the pace of the enemy's advance has slowed down. Some say it's been cut in half. In the first 2 days of October, there was no advance at all. By the evening of October 2nd, the enemy had captured about 8 kilometers. There are some of the most difficult directions, of course. We're talking about the Novopavlivka sector, because the Novopavlivka section of the front, this is southern Donetsk region, Dnipropetrovsk region, Zaporizhzhia. There, unfortunately, the enemy is making constant advances. They are small, but they are ongoing.
Meanwhile, near Dobropilya, the Ukrainian offensive continues. As Commander-in-Chief Oleksandr Syrsky stated the day before, the salient to the east of Pokrovsk was cut off, which made it possible to more effectively destroy the occupiers and build up an exchange fund, as well as to effectively paralyze enemy forces, who are now forced to constantly redeploy their units for reinforcement.
In this situation, the enemy is unable to plan systematic offensive operations or advance in certain sectors in a coordinated manner. So, in other words, there may be a breakthrough, but we strike from the flanks, they get confused and retreat, and we either encircle them or clear the territory, so to speak. This weakens their positions and attacks, and accordingly, their ability to concentrate large forces in order to create a foothold for systematic, already tactical, offensive actions.
At the same time, in the Dnipropetrovsk region, Z military correspondents not only rushed to exaggerate their few successes, but even resorted to outright lies. In the settlement of Verbov, assault troops managed to enter and film yet another video with the tricolor, claiming it was under Russian control. However, just a few hours later, the flag bearers were eliminated, and the Ukrainian flag returned to its rightful place. It is also reported that the Russians recently tried to open a new line of attack towards Zaporizhia. This was reported by the spokesperson for the Southern Defense Forces, Vladislav Voloshin. According to him, the occupiers had already tried to attack there twice the previous morning. In one of the battles, Russian troops launched a mass assault using 6 motorcycles. Ukrainian defense forces successfully repelled the attack. In addition, intelligence has also recorded a concentration of Russian forces in the area of the village of Zherebyovka. There, the occupiers are preparing for new attacks in the direction of Lukyanivske.
And this is one of those directions where we expected them to take some action. But as for Zaporizhzhia, as for the outskirts of Zaporizhzhia, for now, well, the situation hasn't reached that point yet. And the forces and resources they've concentrated there are unlikely to give them the opportunity to count on any significant successes. Well, there will be attempts, we can see that, but to expect any breakthroughs there or any major successes is unlikely.
Against the backdrop of intensified fighting on certain sections of the front, the Ukrainian armed forces have decided to change their defensive tactics, analysts say. In particular, this new approach was first tested in the Dobropilya area and is now being used everywhere the occupiers attempt a breakthrough. The idea is that this should completely neutralize Russia's strategy, the creation of so-called pincers that could lead to encirclement.
For a long time, we watched as the enemy would come in from the flanks somewhere, creating pincers. That's right. And we found it difficult to deal with this and did not respond quickly with counterattacks on the flanks against these pincers, let alone from the rear or against the immediate reserves, where they were bringing in fresh forces. Now we've mastered this tactic. It's multifaceted, unexpected, especially in situations where the enemy is setting up their attacks, for example, in an internal format, and we surround them and strike from the outside.
However, Russia has not given up hope of achieving new military successes this fall, according to statements from the Kremlin. At the very least, this is evidenced by the increased recruitment of new batches of contract soldiers across the entire territory of the Russian Federation. In turn, analysts note that there are already not enough volunteers even to cover Russian losses, let alone to form new reserves.
The forces and resources of the Russians along the entire front line have not increased, neither in quantity nor in quality. So why do they suddenly think that with the same forces and resources but in worse weather conditions, they will be able to achieve any greater results?
Ukrainian drones attacked one of the largest oil refineries in Russia. In these shots, you can see the Kirishi petrochemical plant burning and blazing in the Leningrad region. The capacity of this refinery is almost 18.5 million tons of oil processed per year. Right away, gasoline prices shot up. Russians started complaining again. For example, a resident of Orsk shares her impressions of the latest drone raid on the city and calls on people to express distrust in the government, which cannot protect its citizens from such attacks.
Many people are just in shock because they didn't believe it would happen. They used to say, oh, it won't reach us. But as you can see, it all happened anyway. So far, there is no official information at all. And the question is being asked to the government, where is our security? At the same time, information is posted on the website about ways to protect yourself. But again, it's probably just basements. In kindergartens, children were taken into the hallway and made to sit there. At work, I don't even know where people are supposed to run in a situation like this. Gasoline prices immediately spike at the gas stations because once again, the oil refineries are suffering. Folks, I think it's time for us to start using our heads, to turn on our brains and begin to unite. No one is going to come and save us. Let's peacefully express our protest by declaring our lack of confidence in this system of power.
But the defense forces are not only targeting oil refineries. Russians in the Republic of Karelia were also hit. There, the newest missile ship of the Buyan M project was damaged. It was also hit in the Kursk region. They managed to hit the Garmin radar station, as well as a transport loading vehicle from the Iskander missile system. The enemy also suffered painful losses in the Voronezh region. Special operations forces struck at Russian air defense facilities. And the cherry on top of all this is the strike on the command post of Russia's 8th Army, stationed in the occupied Donbass. I never cease to admire the courage and heroism of Ukrainian soldiers. They hold the front and stand against a huge horde that vastly outnumbers them. That's why I urge you to support the armed forces of Ukraine, and if you can't do so financially, write them words of encouragement in the comments. I know they're watching us, not again but anew. Drones attacked the Russian city of Sochi precisely at the moment when Putin was there. This happened right after the Russian dictator finished telling tall tales at the Valdai summit. By the way, this isn't the first time that friendly drones have accompanied Putin. I think his security detail should reconsider their equipment and bring a bigger suitcase with them. Otherwise, the old man might have an unplanned fecal mishap out of fear. But let me get back to Putin's speech at the summit, or more precisely, at the meeting of the Valdai Discussion Club. The Russian dictator threatened Ukraine with a nuclear catastrophe and mocked Europeans who are concerned about the appearance of Russian drones in the sky. We've gathered the most important and scandalous statements made by Putin.
Putin has once again mustered up some courage and crawled out of his bunker into the light. This time the Russian dictator showed up in Sochi at a meeting of the Valdai Discussion Club. There, Vladimir Vladimirovich spent almost 4 hours pontificating in front of Kremlin journalists, praising himself and the state of affairs inside Russia.
I keep repeating this nonsense, this mantra, over and over again.
As usual, the bunker dweller started off with his favorite kind of action, which, according to the dictator, is sorely lacking in the modern civilized world.
The world, undoubtedly, you'll agree with me, looks dreary when it's monotonous.
At the same time, Putin immediately tries to justify himself. Supposedly, he personally isn't stirring up any trouble in Europe.
They can't possibly believe what they're saying, that Russia is planning to attack NATO. It's impossible to believe that, yet they keep convincing their own people. So what kind of people are these? They are either very incompetent, if they truly believe it, because it's impossible to believe such nonsense, or they're simply dishonest.
However, even the nonsense that Putin himself spouts is hard to believe. It doesn't take even an hour after the bunker dweller assures Europeans they have nothing to fear from the Kremlin before the Russian dictator openly admits to sending his drones into EU countries, disrupting local airports and snooping around NATO military bases in Europe.
Vladimir Vladimirovich, why are you sending so many drones to Denmark? I won't do it anymore. Please don't do it anymore. I won't do it again. I won't send them anymore to France or Denmark or Copenhagen. Where else do they reach? They reach everywhere.
At the same time, the sly dictator with a smile on his face tries to assure those present of his supposedly purely peaceful intentions.
We ourselves have never initiated military confrontation. It's pointless, unnecessary, just unnecessary and simply absurd. It distracts from real problems and challenges. And sooner or later, society will still hold its leaders accountable for the fact that the hopes, aspirations, and needs of their people are being ignored by the elites of their countries.
It seems things are going extremely badly for the bunker dweller, if for the first time since the start of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, he's talking about being held accountable for his actions before the people. However, we shouldn't harbor any illusions that Putin has come to his senses or is even reflecting on his actions. Far from it. It's just that the situation at the front is forcing the bunker dweller to be more cautious in his statements.
There is a common saying that circulates among our people: there is absolutely no effective defense against a crowbar.
And for the Russian army, that crowbar has become the prospect of Ukraine receiving long-range American Tomahawk missiles, along with permission to strike Russian rear positions with them. This could seriously worsen the situation for the occupiers. Even Putin himself has been forced to admit this, unable to come up with anything better than simply accepting the transfer of yet another powerful type of weapon to the Ukrainian armed forces.
As for the Tomahawks, they are truly powerful weapons. Granted, they're not exactly the most modern systems anymore, but they are still very powerful and continue to pose a significant threat.
But that's not all. As Putin admits, it is becoming harder for him to wage war in Ukraine with each passing day. While the Russian army is using donkeys to deliver supplies to the front and sending unprepared and poorly equipped contract soldiers into endless meat grinder assaults, the Ukrainian armed forces have managed to establish a steady supply of the most advanced Western weaponry.
The Ukrainian armed forces receiving enough weapons. They are being supplied with exactly as much as they need.
As a result, the situation for Putin on the front lines is so bleak that soon enough it seems the bunker dweller himself will be seeking a meeting with Zelensky and initiating negotiations for the quickest possible ceasefire. Putin practically said this outright.
And no matter what the disagreements are, if you treat each other with respect, then bargaining, even the toughest, most persistent kind, will still aim to reach an agreement. And that means that in the end, mutually acceptable solutions are possible.
And Vladimir Vladimirovich also didn't forget to cozy up to his new best friend, Donald Trump. Putin has sung Trump's praises more than once, especially regarding the war in Ukraine.
What did President Trump say? He said that if he had been in power, this could have been avoided. I agree with that. Indeed, this could have been avoided if our work with the then Biden administration had been organized differently.
But Putin didn't lavish any praise on the American president's team. On the contrary, from the stage, the Russian dictator began threatening the White House administration.
Well then, go and deal with this paper tiger.
However, the aging Russian dictator hasn't resembled a tiger for a long time now. Putin can't even manage to stand before journalists for the full 3 hours. Most of the time he was forced to sit hunched in his chair, which did not go unnoticed. Nor can the public fail to notice that the Russian dictator's threats are becoming more and more absurd. If a few years ago the Russian president, together with his propagandists, was threatening to turn the West into radioactive ash, now all the Kremlin is capable of is causing mischief with its drones in the skies over Europe and speculating about reconciliation.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
Reading the comments under previous episodes, I see that many of you are watching us from Kazakhstan, Moldova, Europe, and even the USA. We, Ukrainians, are very grateful for your support and proud to have such reasonable viewers. Let us know in the comments under this episode as well which country you're watching us from and whether you support our fight against the empire of evil. I always enjoy reading your comments, and while we continue, the most interesting part is coming up next. He survived the war but died at home. In the Krasnodar region, a 37-year-old veteran of the so-called special military operation died after an altercation with a police officer. According to Ostorozhno Novosti, the family claims he was beaten. His body was found at night, all bruised and covered in blood. But the investigator claimed there were supposedly no bodily injuries. A criminal case was only opened under the article, Causing Death by Negligence. The victim's mother is demanding justice, but all she gets from the authorities are formal replies. And this is not an isolated case in Russia. The system breaks and discards even those who have fought in its own war. All this is happening against the backdrop of volunteers dying at the front more often than others. This is confirmed by data on more than 134,000 killed. Who in Putin's army has a chance to return home and who is doomed not to survive even until the next rotation? Next, we'll talk about the scale and patterns of deaths in Putin's army.
Only just.
From September 19th to October 3rd, the Russian army irretrievably lost more than 1,000 people in the war in Ukraine. The losses of the Russian Federation are horrifying. The economy is falling apart at the seams, but Putin is ready to make even greater sacrifices. Now, even businesses are being harshly required to help recruit people for the front.
He knows that people are being slaughtered, and there's nowhere left to stand. There's nowhere left at all.
Independent journalists using open sources have identified the names of 134,125 Russian soldiers killed since the start of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. This data allows us to track a kind of pulse of the war, showing how the Kremlin spared no one and threw its people into local assaults just to capture another village in Ukraine.
Our commanders are making irrational decisions, sending us to certain death. There are just so many different civilian drones and FPVs, and Baba Yaga is hitting us with all kinds of weapons, machine guns, artillery, everything. And there's no cover at all. They're just sending us out in the open. And now the guys are digging their own graves.
For the first year and a half, the casualty graph looked like a roller coaster. That was when Russian troops were storming Bakhmut and Avdiivka.
The enemy was met asynchronously. When a son is lost, it breaks your heart. It breaks a mother's heart.
The Russian Ministry of Defense, led at the time by Shoigu, was sending 100 to 150 people to their graves every day. Sometimes the numbers dropped to 50 to 60 killed per day.
It's like they're just sending coffins to the slaughter. There was no clarity about anything. And who is left to replenish the ranks? There are no people left. They're running out. Only the last reserves remain.
Since October 2023, the curve has remained consistently high. It rarely drops below 120 and only in exceptional cases. And the recent declines on the chart are not due to some miraculous salvation of Russian troops, but rather the time needed to verify and process the latest obituaries.
Our guys went through hell in captivity. They endured numerous tortures and abuses. Most have shrapnel wounds and concussions, broken bones that healed without medical attention, and one of them has lost a leg. They all need medical assistance to undergo a military medical commission and ultimately a leave. But instead, these wounded men are being sent to the front lines.
In terms of geography, Bashkortostan and Tatarstan lead in the number of their citizens killed in the war. Here, local volunteers help identify the deceased. We have a town, right?
Our town, right? Miski. In 15 years of the war in Afghanistan, there were only 3 or 4 people killed there. And just look at what's happening now. Everything is just covered in flags.
There's a special category, volunteers. Those who signed a contract in 2022. Right now, they make up almost a third of all identified casualties. That's 29%.
Can you imagine this is one country? These are factories. For 2? Now there are newly appearing new burials now.
The Kremlin is disposing of those who went to war voluntarily, who fell for the propaganda. Prisoners make up the second largest category of losses, 14%. Some of the dead are officially recorded as volunteers, not convicts, where
we think today about those who are in places of detention and love their homeland. There is a good chance to prove it by signing a contract for a mission with recruitment.
mobilized soldiers make up 11% of the list. This figure is understated because obituaries often conceal the status.
Just one.
One of the most important categories of losses are Russian officers who consciously went to kill Ukrainians for the sake of medals on their chests. Journalists have counted 5,847 dead, and these are already with exact names. Among them are 150 colonels and as many as 12 generals.
We all lived our daily lives, didn't have a single worry to trouble us, rejoiced in moments of happiness and good fortune, grieved deeply during times of sorrow and loss, and then, quite suddenly, with a shocking bang, the young men, our friends and companions, went off to die.
For the Russian army, this is a painful blow because their entire system relies on officers. They coordinate the interaction of different units and accordingly give criminal orders for strikes on Ukraine. But what are the real numbers? It was our Putin who got involved in this war, so many people have died.
They didn't come to you?
Of course, and that's how you have to raise your economy in your own time, to you.
They didn't come into the fire.
What is visible from open sources covers only 45 to 65% of the actual losses. That is, the list of 134,000 is just the tip of the iceberg, which Putin is doing everything he can to hide. Currently, Ukraine counts more than 1,100,000 losses. This list includes both the wounded and missing Russian occupiers. Even the so-called occupied LDNR stopped publishing data on their losses since December 2022. In reality, as reported by BBC and Mediazona, the number could be more than 300,000 Russian soldiers killed. This does not include the bodies that still remain on the battlefield. The figure is staggering.
The tags are hanging. In short, there will be a ton of dead guys, just countless. I think that by the time we learn the whole truth about their numbers, the entire country will already be dreaming.
The Russian army, which has already lost hundreds of thousands of people, continues to fight. So-called volunteers from Eki are making up for the shortage of personnel. Officers are dying faster than they can be trained. and the death statistics have become the main indicator of the successes of the world's second army.
In Munich, the airport was paralyzed for 2 days in a row because of drones. Planes could neither land nor take off. According to the BBC, on the evening of October 3rd, flights at Munich's largest airport were suspended at 9:30 p.m. local time. About 6,500 passengers were stranded in the terminal. Earlier, on October 2nd, at least 17 flights were delayed due to drones in the sky. I know that many viewers from Europe are watching us. Tell me honestly, have you already experienced flight delays because of Russian drones? What is the general mood in your countries about this issue? Is it anxiety or calm? I'm really looking forward to your comments and opinions in the comment section. During a visit to Denmark, Ukrainian military personnel demonstrated their developments for countering aerial threats to their European colleagues. According to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, our specialists launched a Styemka strike drone, which accurately hit Danish Banshees. Military representatives from various European countries were invited to the demonstration. They witnessed the effectiveness of Ukrainian technologies firsthand and bombarded the pilots with questions. The moment the drone was hit was captured on video. Let me remind you that in Denmark, the joint exercise Wings of the Raven is taking place against the backdrop of a series of incidents involving Russian drones and violations of the airspace of Denmark, Poland, Romania, and Estonia. In the past 20 days, about 17 cases of Russian drones flying over Europe have been recorded, almost every day. According to Reuters, the Russian fleet has repeatedly provoked incidents in Denmark's territorial waters. They have repeatedly approached ships in Denmark's maritime zone, demonstratively aiming weapons at them and disrupting their navigation systems. The Board and Intelligence Service warned that such actions by Moscow could lead to unintended escalation. The Russian State Duma has come up with a new way to care for the people, to repaint Khrushchevkas in life-affirming colors. And yes, I'm not joking. According to the deputies, lilac or mint-colored walls are supposed to lift Russian spirits and make them forget about meager salaries, long lines at gas stations, and the collapsed healthcare system. But while ordinary people are being promised joy from colorful facades, the deputies themselves are living much more cheerfully. And here is a clear example of that. In 2024, Vitaly Milonov insisted that only people who had lost their minds would buy the new iPhone. And in general, Apple smartphones are dangerous. But this is already in 2025. He himself was one of the first to show off the new iPhone 17 Pro. You know, this contrast speaks for itself. The entire budget goes to war and luxury for the elite. And ordinary Russians, instead of real solutions, get a facade painted in a life-affirming color. If you agree, leave a like under this video. Once a brilliant actor and director, now a typical Putin fanatic, Nikita Mikhalkov responded to Alla Pugacheva, who in her recent interview wished him good health. But our journalists will tell you not about that, but about what the mustachioed bumblebee has become known for during the full-scale war.
Nikita Mikhalkov is one of the most controversial figures in Russian culture. A director, actor, and Oscar winner, he has long since become not just a figure in the arts, but a symbol of loyalty to the Kremlin.
I understood the essence of our president when, many years ago, in 2002, we were talking and he said to me, "Imagine who I was and who I have become. Did God really do this just so I could finish what others didn't manage to eat?" This truly speaks to the profound seriousness with which this remarkable man came to effectively lead a vast and truly great country.
Today, his name is increasingly associated not with films, but with propaganda and political statements. His program, Besegon, has become a platform for broadcasting official narratives, and Mikhalkov himself a trusted representative of the authorities.
We bear an enormous and profound sense of guilt for what is tragically happening today in Ukraine. A truly devastating situation. Enormous guilt. For a remarkable 30 years, we diligently raised American children, and for an equally significant 30 years, we meticulously trained their military personnel. With our very own hands, essentially through a profound neglect and a deeply ingrained belief that they would absolutely never leave us, we ultimately ended up not only losing them completely, but now, quite astonishingly, they are practically waging a full-scale Third World War against us, a truly devastating conflict.
The Vuchim and the Mikhalkov family have always been closely connected to the state. His father, Sergei Mikhalkov, was the author of the USSR anthem and a man who worked directly with the Kremlin. Even back then, the family enjoyed a special status, and Nikita himself was close to the top echelons of the Soviet Union.
Life in the Soviet Union for him and his family was predictable and privileged. His father wrote the anthem for Stalin, and later had good relations with Khrushchev, Brezhnev, Andropov, and Chernenko. An assistant to the latter left the following description in his diary.
The most renowned writer of all times and peoples, Sergei Vladimirovich Mikhalkov, started visiting Chernenko more and more often. Here they are together in a photo. His
career was built not only on talent, but also on the ability to stay close to those in power. He knew how to build relationships in such a way as to remain an insider under any regime.
Several times, Nikita Sergeyevich became a trusted representative of Putin as well as of Moscow Mayor Sobyanin. And if the ideology of the new authorities is based on demonizing the old ones, well, what can you do? A gentleman monarchist will, without much difficulty, revise his previous statements.
At the time, I had perfectly valid reasons to support Yeltsin, because I didn't know any of the things that we learned later.
Under Putin, his position only became stronger. He became not just a director, but a trusted representative of the Kremlin, a person who conveys the necessary messages through culture. But serving the authorities is also a business. Today, Mikhalkov is surrounded by an entire empire, ownership of land, estates, elite real estate, and participation in commercial projects.
In general, the director manages not only to make films, but also to make money. And in a wide variety of fields too. Since 2012, he has owned a forestry business that leases about 30,000 hectares of forest in the Pavlovsky district of the Nizhny Novgorod region, as well as a wood processing company.
This is how millions of budget rubles were turned into the director's personal wealth.
At the same time, Mikhalkov does not like to file tax returns. The last time he did so was in 2017. At that time, he declared an income of almost 530 million rubles. That same declaration boasted 89 land plots, 6 residential houses, 11 non-residential buildings, and much more.
Another talent of Nikita Sergeyevich is his habit of writing letters and complaints. In recent years, he has repeatedly appealed to the authorities with denunciations against colleagues and opponents. Sometimes it's officials who get in his way, sometimes doctors, sometimes competitors in the cultural sphere.
Mikhalkov has long considered himself not just a general of Russian cinema, but of world culture as a whole. And where there is culture, there are questions of morality and ethics. For example, journalist Ksenia Sobchak claims that it was Mikhalkov who reported to Putin that the nearly naked parties were organized by Nastya Ivleva.
2 sources confidently and in detail stated that it was Nikita Mikhalkov. And not only did he report it, but he also showed the infamous video and added comments about 666 and a satanic party.
What do you think of our news? Let us know what we should change to become better. We will definitely take it into account. In the meantime, please like this video to support what we do. And be sure to subscribe to our channel, Ukraine Today, so you don't miss future episodes. See you soon. Subtitle editor I. Boykova.